Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Daniel Umstead. I am happy to announce my guest that came on the RNG radio show, the one and only from You Are Not Alone Elder Care, the Adrian Allotey. Adrian, how are you doing today?
Oh, I am wonderful, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for bringing awareness to end of life issues. And, most importantly, thank you for highlighting local businesses. It's amazing that you choose to uplift others, which hopefully you'll be uplifted along the way, but that's amazing that as opposed to receiving, your intention is always to give. So thank you.
Oh, definitely. Well, it's not my empire to build, and I just got this radio show. I wanted to ensure a platform for everybody's voice to get spoken and heard. And without me having a show, the biggest thing that everybody suggested was, well, you need guests if you got a radio show. So I want to thank you, right back to you. So with that, let's transition to You Are Not Alone Elder Care. Tell us all about it.
So I am an End of Life Doula. And a lot of people have never even heard of end of life doulas. They may have heard of birth doulas, but not at end of life. That people are not aware that there is non-medical assistance to help those at end of life. And that my belief system is that death is not a medical event, that it really is a spiritual event. And so as a doula, I offer an array of services. In two formats. One is the reality is that once you turn 18 and you're making decisions for yourself, my belief is that you should begin to plan or have an aware of what you want for end of life. Now, what you want at 18 may change for what you want at 34 and 65, and so you should continue to revisit that conversation. I also have clients that come to me once they get a terminal diagnosis. And I really got to say, the sooner I'm working with a person, the more I get to know them, the more I'm able to really bring about that optimum end of life experience. And so as a doula, I come in with training, expertise, a lot of volunteer work as well. And I just meet the person where they are. I know that there are phases to death. There are typical or normal things that normally happen at the end of life. And so I'm just there to sort of support the person where they are and their loved ones.
Right. I love that. And I want to step in for a second. A lot of people are afraid to just talk about wills. A lot of people are afraid to talk about trust. A lot of people are just even simply afraid to talk about even just leaving a job or even retirement just in general as far as what's next. So this stage in life, it has to occur. It has to occur. So having that guidance, having that step-by-step, and having somebody who's been an expert in the field, I definitely will help somebody, especially transition, to that next life and not just feel scared and weak. You have so many people that are usually covering a hospital bed, and it's like, well, when do we pull the plug? Or should we just wait? And it's so much sadness and grief during those moments. And even for when my grandmother had passed away, something like this definitely would have probably been much more of a smoother transition than getting the call. Hey, is she okay? Hey, we got family coming in from town to visit. Hey, this is going on. So having that step-by-step process, I thank you so much for that, Adrian, because a lot of people get fearful about that, but for you to actually being able to step in and I know you probably didn't quote Michael Jackson on it, but saying you are not alone definitely has so much breakthrough with that. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it really is it's a calling. It's my ministry work. It's the way that I serve the world. But you mentioned a lot of things there. You mentioned about death being a fear. And so we all know how to live because we do that. We do that daily. Death, unless it's supernatural, of course, you only get one chance at that. So there are fears around death. And so what I do is, again, I just meet them where they are. I listen to what their concerns are. With the different phases of dying, there's certain things that can get done. So you have like the initial shock phase. If I meet someone and they're in a shock phase, I just allow them to feel that. Then there's the, oh boy, why am I lacking the word?
No problem. Take your time.
Then there's the next phase, which means that the shock is over and we can really do some work. And then there's that actively dying phase. And so really, I go in and I prepare them for their last breath. I hold their hand through it, and I then support those who they leave behind to be able to create a new normal. And so a lot of people are aware, let me just, before I forget, say this, that a lot of people are aware of like what's called advanced directives, that planning that you were talking about. And advanced directives are those medical forms. So what do? They fill them out, they put them in a drawer. They don't talk about it with their loved ones. No one knows what your wishes are. What I do is, the medical forms are very important. We get those going. And then I also create what's called a living well plan. And so what that living well plan does, it validates the person until their last breath. A lot of times we say people are dying, but really they're still living. They're living until that last breath. And so I want to honor that. And so I'll ask some questions like, who needs to be notified? Who do you want there? What do you want the environment to look like, smell like? All those things that you'd be surprised at if you don't have those conversations. And then to go back and facilitate family discussions. Because what sometimes will happen is, you may talk about it, but if you don't tell the family, one daughter or son may say, oh, mom wanted this, dad wanted this. So you had to have the conversations too. So I always follow up with those conversations with the family as well.
Okay, I like that. And I want people to understand the transparency. This is the same thing that somebody would do for a wedding. This is the same thing that somebody would do for a funeral. This is the same thing that somebody would do for a birthday party, baby shower. It's all about planning, folks. So I appreciate you breaking that down for us, Adrian. One thing I do want to actually add and inquire about. Now, with this, what came to you as far as actually wanting to do this in the first place?
Well, my grandmother lived to 106.
Praise God. Okay. I'm gonna need your blood sample so I can put it in my child, but go ahead. All right.
So she lived to be 106. And during her later years, as I began to become successful in a career, have my own children, my husband, have all these other responsibilities, I really couldn't show up the way I wanted to. Now, I might have paid to bring in care because I wanted her to have the care, but I knew that my grandmother, she was in good health, but she lacked companionship. And so guilt is guilt. And so I felt a lot of guilt. My family would tell me, you're doing your best, but I felt a lot of guilt. But when it came time for my grandmother to transition, I was actually the last family member to be with her. Wow. And I think she died like an hour later. I didn't know what the active dying phase looked like. If I had known, maybe I would have stayed that last hour to be there with her. Now, I do believe that things happen the way they're supposed to. Some people don't want anybody there, and she may have chosen to wait till I left. But I didn't have the information. I just didn't know. Her medical team was great, but they just didn't give us that information. And so I'm there as a doula just to provide the awareness. And that's what takes away from the fear of the unknown. I'm saying, listen, family, listen, the person who's in the last moments, this is what's happening. This is probably what may happen next. So it's just information. And I didn't have that information with my grandmother. So it's my way of sharing and just giving people the support. Sometimes there are tools. I have a little toolkit. Maybe it's bringing in essential oils. It could be using some crystals in the room. It could be small things like, okay, they're not using this medical equipment. Let's clear this medical equipment out of the way, so that way when that time clears, there's just open space. There's like clarity in the environment. And so
I like that.
Yeah.
Wow, that is really awesome. I'm like, got in my head right now. I'm like, man, she probably got it where it's like white doves and everything like that, and angels just surround the whole place. But
let me tell you, there are some things that happen at the end of life that can't be explained by medicine.
Oh, I know. I definitely have felt it, and I've definitely experienced because of sadly and unfortunately, but also fortunately as well, I've definitely have experienced death in my family. But especially being in the room, you do feel something that cannot be explained. It's just inevitable. It's just for a fact, it cannot be explained. Now, with COVID-19, unfortunately, you know, still being around, and thought it was going to be done, but some people just don't know how to put their mask on, amongst other things, or going around licking ice cream. But we're not going to talk about that. I want to know, with your business, how has COVID-19 affected your business, and in what way?
Well, there's been a lot of death, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I won't even go into the politics of the numbers. That doesn't matter. But that's what we're hearing, we're seeing, everyone's talking about it. And so COVID has brought death awareness and to the forefront. People are, I believe, are more in touch now that, you know, of the life cycle, that you will one day take your last breath. And so what my hope is that people will now take the time really to plan and have those difficult conversations with their family. You know, I saw families that weren't prepared. They didn't know whether or not their loved one wanted artificial life support. They didn't know if they wanted to be home or in the hospital. There was just so many things that they didn't know. And then the tragic part of it is that whether they were dying of COVID or not, some of them couldn't be there to hold their loved one's hands. And so what I'm finding now is that I'm also a Reiki practitioner. So a lot of my end of life work deals with energy and, again, clearing space energetically and just preparing for whatever's to happen will happen spiritually. But what I find myself doing now is bringing some healing to those who are feeling angry, guilt, you know, shame that they weren't there. And so I do that energetically through Reiki. And so again, my hope is that people will have these conversations. And I have to say that COVID has made me take a really bold stance. Sometimes when I talk about death prior to this, I would kind of tiptoe around it. Mm-hmm. I got to stop that because I have some gifts to share with the world, and I want to share them.
Definitely. Now, before we continue on, one question that I forgot to actually ask you in the beginning: where can folks find you, whether it be on social media or website?
So I am like everywhere, right? So my company is You Are Not Alone Elder Care, LLC. The You Are Not Alone Elder Care, the Y, I use the acronyms, YANAEC, You Are Not Alone Elder Care. So my website is YANAEC.com. And all of my social media handles are YANAEC LLC. So I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, you know, Instagram, you name it, I'm out there.
Okay.
And I'm not really sure. Do people still get phone numbers and email addresses?
Listen, I'll be honest with you. We ain't even gonna cut it short because I'm gonna just be real. I have asked people to provide their phone numbers. I've gotten a couple of people with their email addresses, but even for myself, I did an interview on Spotify with the gentleman about Money Matters, and they were like, "Hey Dan, how can people get in contact with you?" And I just gave my phone number. I'm like, "You want to get in contact with me? Give me a call." So Adrian, if you would love to leave your phone number so it can be broadcasted to the world, and you don't mind getting 1,000 phone calls after this interview is done, please, by all means, feel free to share.
Sure. So, you know, I do attract mostly people who make the initial calls are the adult children who's having a hard time raising their children and being there for their parents. And so they do call. So my number is 856-497-3512. 856-497-3512. And they do email too. And my email address is my first name, ADRIAN, with the period, and then Allotey, ALLOTEY, and that's at Yannick, YANAEC.com.
Perfect. Okay, good, awesome. Now, the other thing that I want to talk to you about as well is with the business, and I don't think we touched on it so much. How long ago has You Are Not Alone Elder Care been around for?
So I was very successful in a career. and I started doing Reiki work. And then I realized that my Reiki work was going to be used in the realm of volunteering. And I chose to volunteer beginning in January 2017 with those at the End of Life. And so I've been doing it as a volunteer for about 2 years, but my actual business, and I walked away from my job, happened in December 2018. So for 2 years I volunteer, and I still do volunteer because some people just won't know to look up End of Life Doula. Now you're helping with that, of course, but some people don't know. So I still do volunteer, but for 2 years, December 2018 is when I started. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Now you had mentioned, of course, an 856 number. Where are you based out in Jersey? Is it correct?
Yeah. So I actually am in like Central Jersey, Middlesex County.
Okay.
But I travel for End of Life. So I've gone all the way as far as like Cherry Hill, Voorhees, only because there aren't that many End of Life doulas. And I really want to serve. Like, that's my love language. That's my gift to the world. And so I do travel. I travel south. I travel north. And so some people may not do that, but I will do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool, awesome. Now, the other thing that I do want to ask you, and I actually ask everybody who's on the show, for being a business owner, you definitely know the basic steps as far as making you successful, especially when you were able to walk away from your job back in late 2018. What advice would you give to somebody who's looking to get their business started and started out there?
So I am of the mindset of, and I know this is like a buzzword, but it's not a buzzword for me. Quiet your mind, be really mindful in the moment. Your life purpose will reveal itself. When you quiet things down, center yourself, and it doesn't like happen overnight. Some people may, for me it didn't. It took me some steps. But once your life purpose is revealed, go after it full force. You may have to work a little bit more or do different things along the way, or it may just be a part-time thing for a little while, but just be authentic. And I even say that in a sense that when you show up and just be yourself, maybe you don't get the deal, but don't change yourself to get the deal, because that just means that person is not for you. And the person who's waiting for you, they're sitting back just waiting like, she's coming, and they'll actually find you. I believe that they'll find you. So just alignment, being authentic. Again, I'm not surprised that there's so many moments before this that revealed, I always, even as a kid, I would help the elderly people in the neighborhood. Just because, and not have to tell anybody that I help the elderly people. I also, the 360 moment, I actually had a birth doula when I had my first baby. Now, I didn't have on my second one, but my first one, when you want to get everything perfect. So I had a doula providing that emotional, mental support, just explaining to me, this is what's going to happen next. This is how you can keep it as natural as possible. And so that's what I now do at the End of Life.
Okay, awesome. And I love that as well. And I'm actually kind of glad that you shared that, because I wanted to give a comparison, if you will. So folks, especially when you're getting your business started, and it's a good segue for it, when you're getting your business started, another tip to add on is getting a mentor. This is the same thing as, utilizing Adrian's services. You're having somebody walk you through the process. So the same way as Adrian's walking through the process as far as, taking on the next step in their life, because we all look at it as continuous. No matter what your background is, I find most people say that there is life after death. So when you're actually looking at your business, you should be having somebody walk your hand through. There's nothing wrong with it. It's nothing to be ashamed about at all. All the great ones, from small to medium to large, definitely have somebody showing them, whether it be indirectly, they're looking up a bunch of YouTube videos about that individual, or they actually have somebody reaching out. So take that time to follow the same steps as somebody else is to get you to your level. And like Adrian said, find that quiet place, find that quiet place. Now, if you got kids, spouses running around, the dog is barking in the background, it might be hard, but there's nothing wrong with waking up 5 to 10 minutes early before everybody else. And there's nothing wrong with waiting till everybody's falling asleep. Hey, oh, ain't nobody around? Okay, cool. and taking that time to focus on what your goal is. So Adrian, thank you so much. Before we go though, please, can you give us your social media contact information as well as your phone number again?
Sure. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, on Twitter, and the handles there are YANAEC LLC. So you can find me through all of them. You Are Not Alone Elder Care LLC. YANAEC LLC. And so before we go, I do have a question for you.
Yes, of course. The interviewer has now become the interviewee. I shall get my notes ready.
So Daniel, Mr. Daniel, can you tell me how you came up with RNG radio show?
Yeah, sure. So the business itself was the Robert Nathaniel Group. I actually started in February 2018, honestly, just to get that branding done of, making sure that I had an LLC. The radio show, which actually came about as an idea in a quiet place, middle of May, and I decided to call it RNG pretty much after the name of the company. But the reason behind the Robert Nathaniel Group is actually my middle name. Now my whole government's out there. Thank you, Adrian. No, I'm kidding. But no, my middle name, Robert, and then my son's middle name, Nathaniel, I actually just wanted to combine that because he is actually the last Umstead throughout everybody coming from my grandfather. So to continue that legacy on, I wanted that business to continue on. So for him being a 10-year-old, seeing this, he knows what he needs to prepare for. So, and hence the reason why I called it the RNG radio show.
And you'll one day mentor him, right?
Oh, yes. I'm mentoring him now, and he's actually mentoring me. He's showing me different tips and tricks on Instagram, Facebook. He ain't even got a social media account, but it's crazy how a child can just break down the simplest of things for you. And you're like, wait, I didn't even think about that. I was talking to him in the car about figuring out even a font to use as far as the design for a new t-shirt. And he was like, oh, kind of like a circus. And I was like, it's just like a circus font. Thank you, son. Thank you. So we're always bouncing ideas off of one another, and I'm always getting ideas from him because I'm like, hey, if I could grasp the attention of a 10-year-old, especially my 10-year-old, I will definitely do very, very well in business. So.
Well, I wish you well, and I thank you again for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And for the folks that are watching, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch me on Facebook Live for the full RNG radio show, or you're more than welcome to check out the replay on YouTube. Adrian Allotey from You Are Not Alone Elder Care, thank you again so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, bye-bye.
Fleslet on the beat.